Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, new paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here 9 times a week, Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will take time to subscribe and click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, be entertained and inspired. A reminder that Choices, which is my book, 5 Steps for Life, it's available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle with Audible, soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we do have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, please go to richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address. If you go to richarddugan.com, there is also a link directly to PayPal so that you can send us whatever support you can. And we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also ask that you take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. And with that, we now take you to our very special interview and guest here on Tell Me Your Story. And welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, Reverend Dr. D. It's a pleasure to have you with us, along with our very special guest who has, I would say, a very timely message for us here on the program, as well as the book and message, basically, The Way to World Peace, an idea whose time has come. Kenneth and it's Callison. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
I know that a lot of people are rather concerned, not just in the United States, but around the world, for the United States, for other parts of the world. But it seems as though peace is not really at hand from the standpoint that we've been looking for peace, well, probably as long as man has been on the planet, going all the way back, if you want to accept the story, of Cain and Abel, who didn't get along. I mean, they're sort of like the beginning of a lack of peace in the world. Am I not too far off there?
Well, I think certainly there's been institutionalized war for about the last 10,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
There's always been conflict and forms of violence, but institutionalized global war is a different matter. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It's the management of conflict. Whereas war is the absence of management.
Yeah. Well, there are those in this country right now who feel as though they're at war against our current administration for whatever reason, and that human life is valued less than the goals and efforts on the part of our government. I mean, there are people who are very concerned. They're very scared because there have been U.S. citizens who have been targeted and so forth, and even killed. And it's a real concern in this country in particular. But again, this is nothing new in the world and in world history. These are kinds of things. And again, I understand what you're saying, that peace, a world without peace or a world with peace is not without conflict. It's, as you say, the management of conflict. Is that perspective or perception on the part of those who feel as though there is a war going on between citizens and government, is that a matter of perception, that they are maybe not looking at it correctly, or is there some truth to what they're perceiving?
Well, I think it's part of both. From a global level or from a species level, we really haven't decided yet, for some reason, whether we're worthy to survive or not. We don't value ourselves as a species. So those are more core issues. From a governmental standpoint, from a societal standpoint, Well, we've been hiring professional politicians for several hundred years to run the planet. How's that working for you? You know?
Yeah.
So, as far as the U.S. Government and society, I think there certainly is a lot of concern, but as you brought up, it's not really new. And I generally don't get into politics too much because I think it's can kind of be go down the rabbit hole a bit. But in the United States, and this has been through whether it's liberal or conservative administrations,
Hmm.
I think our two biggest problems are number one, the government controls the people do not control the government, no matter how much we fool ourselves into thinking that.
Hmm.
And secondly, the American public has an almost unlimited capacity to absorb bullshit. So it's we are way too passive in acceptance of things that are wrong. And it doesn't matter whether that is a conservative administration. Every president I've ever known has said, they're going to balance the budget and reduce spending and reduce military expenditures and return some freedom to the population. And they really haven't done that.
No, I get you. And we won't get into politics. That's not the point of the question myself, but it is again, we've got this perceived chaos that's going on, and it's frustrating for a lot of folks. I don't listen to or watch any more of the news than I can help because I just don't need that frustration in my life. However, my wife does. And she'll come to me in tears sometimes about this event that happened and that event that happened and so forth. And I just don't know how to respond. It's like,
Well, we are
this
facing some existential threats.
concerns.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we've
Okay.
got a third of the planet lives in pretty dire poverty, and
Yeah.
the other two-thirds of the planet manufactures weapons to kill each other.
Yeah.
And then at any given time, there's about 30 wars going on the planet. That's been going on for centuries. We've got an impending water crisis that's not being addressed. And by the year 2040, there's going to be almost half of the population of the planet won't have access to clean water. So that'll start a war.
Wow.
And then we are collapsing the ecosystem. It's not just global warming or climate change. We're poisoning the planet.
Yeah.
So, but then there's other threats that aren't so physical, like we are experiencing a loss of joy and a loss of belief in ourselves and the future. That may
Mm.
be more of a risk than the physical risks. But there
Yeah.
are solutions to all of this that are in the book, on the website, and so forth, and in our consciousness.
Well, let's talk about first of all the impetus for the book. I mean, there is a gentleman out of Santa Barbara, California, who has this movement that is now 6 years old, if not older. And his basic question is, well, his I think that sort of the title of his foundation is "World Without War." Now, he asks the question, what would the world look like to you as an individual without war? And he's not talking about a world with peace. He's saying a world without war. What would that look like? And
And
everybody's going to
what
have a different perspective on that.
and what does he say the world would look like?
He doesn't actually say. He leaves that up to the individual that he's talking to, or the group that he's talking to, or what have you, because it is up to all of us, not up to him, but it's up to all of us as to what it is that we want. As a matter of fact, in my last interview that I just had, we were talking a little bit about that, and that we as a people collectively have got to decide what it is that we want. For example, let's just maybe keep it local here in the United States. What is it that we want? What kind of lifestyle do we want? Are we going to allow others to live the lifestyle that they want to live? And if they're not bothering us, then we can live the lifestyle we want, and we are all happy and accepting of one another's ways of living. One of the slogans that I use on this program, excuse me, Ken, is that we're looking for those new ways of living because the old ways don't work. All you have to do is look around you. and they're not working. But the question is, if they're not working, what are we going to replace them with? What are we going to, because to reform something, you still have a lot of the old stuff. And one of my guests says that you don't want to tear down the old institutions until you create new ones that make the old ones obsolete. Um, it's a real interesting dynamic to say the least. But you're talking about something more specific, the way to world peace. Um, I'm curious as to what you see that looking like, and are we smart enough? Sometimes we question whether or not we are intelligent beings on this planet. But do you think, from your observations and perspectives, living amongst the rest of us, that we can solve some of these problems and maybe reach a place where we can have, um, you know, peace, world peace, and that kind of. And again, using your definition, that there will always conflicts, and how we manage them is the deal, rather than what seems like what's happening on a global level is we seem to get more and more starting more wars or conflicts over and over again. What are your thoughts?
Well, you asked about three different questions. So let's start with uh, the concept of evolution. So we've been taught that as we evolve, we become smarter. Over the eons of evolution, we become smarter. I'm not so sure about that, but it's also not the way it works. Evolution does not create intelligence. Intelligence creates evolution. So intelligence created the universe, it's incorporated into all living things. As we avail ourselves of that, as we incorporate the intelligence of the universe into our souls, into our behavior, then we evolve.
Hmm.
And evolution is not something that happens to us. Evolution is something that we participate in. We can decide. So, and the book is a combination of metaphysics, which is the definition is the study of reality. So a combination of metaphysics, politics, history, philosophy, and quantum mechanics. So a lot of what we talk about in the book and on the website is more of an overall change in consciousness and what it takes to get there. As Einstein said, you can't solve problems from the same level of consciousness that created them.
Right.
So here we have these uh, obvious concerns and threats of poverty and war and water and collapse of the ecosystem. We're trying to solve those while we're killing each other. So that's like trying to have a dinner party while the house is on fire.
E-
So,
Good metaphor. Good
it is.
metaphor.
And then, of course, we deny the house is on fire. Ignore the
Yeah.
fire. It's not a problem. So, we kind of have things backwards.
Mm. Yeah.
So here's, if you kind of reduce things to awareness and enlightenment, it becomes a little easier to see the path.
Hmm.
But humanity signed a contract with the universe a long, long time ago, and it only had one requirement, one, and we still are not abiding by it. And that one requirement was to behave with honor.
Yeah.
Honor your neighbor, the planet itself, and the other animals on the planet.
Yeah.
We haven't done any of those. We got one thing to do. That's what. So maybe we should return to some basics here.
And what would those basics be from your perspective? And let me just say, I like that mug of yours. Is that copper?
It is. It's a yes. It's
That's
just
beautiful.
water in there. There's not.
Yeah. No, no, no. I don't think that's the mule. I'm pretty sure.
No, there's no mule in there.
All right. Beautiful cup. But let's go back to what are these elements that you're talking about?
Well, some of them are basic that, and what I hear a lot is, well, Give us some action items. Give us a list of things we can do.
Yeah.
We'll just check the boxes and then all of a sudden we'll be at peace. Well, if you need action items, then I would embrace and execute on four things: joy, forgiveness, compassion, and honor.
Okay. All right. And those will be points we'll be talking about. We're talking here about the latest work by Kenneth Paul Collison, and it is The Way to World Peace, an idea whose time has come. I know there are a lot of people who would agree with the statement in that regard, but we're going to get more in depth into that as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I am Reverend Dr. D. Richard Dugan, and we are here talking about The Way to World Peace, and we're talking about it with the author of the book, Kenneth Paul Collison. And I want to, one of the things that I find so interesting, and I was flipping through the book as well as the some of these chapters, and a couple here, and I like the way that these were put together. And one in particular, in the order in which they are listed, you have here the polarity of mankind, which we are experiencing both nationally but internationally. But what I love is chapters 10, 11, 12, and even 13: truth, change, perspectives, and evolution. And I'm going to jump to 12, which is perspectives. It's one of the things we talk about here. We have this circle, and there's an event going on in the circle. And what we ask our listeners and viewers to do is to find a point on that circle and start and observe the event, and then move to another point and another point and another, until hopefully maybe you've worked your way around the circle. You may not have time to do that, but you are getting a broader perspective every time you move about the event that's going on inside that circle, whether it be the Olympics or a car crash or a volcano exploding and so forth. Because what seems to happen, Ken, is that we'll see an event on television and we have this knee-jerk reaction to say, oh, well, this must be what happened. And then after a few days or a week or 2 weeks, and there's been further investigation, turns out that's not what happened at all. I realize you saw the video or you saw the story that was being put on the news, but they didn't get a scoop because they didn't tell the truth, because they didn't have more information. And it seems like that's where the other chapter there on truth seems to go by the wayside, because what we choose to say is the truth, i.e., what happened, is not only going through our own personal filters, but also based upon little or sometimes no information. But somehow we have come to a conclusion. I put it this way with science. Let's just say there are 100 laws of the universe, okay? In 2025, there are 100 laws. But early in 2026, a scientist found 101, the 101st law. So now we have 101. But we said we knew all the laws back in 2025. How does this play into this process of working towards having a sense of peace, having a sense of security, having a sense of safety? I mean, I'm glad I'm not a kid going to school anymore, because I wouldn't feel safe in the schoolyard based upon what's happened over the years. Can you share a little bit about your perspective on what I've had to share?
Well, of course, perspective varies based on a number of things: how you
Mm-hmm.
were raised, your standard of living, the country and society and culture you were born into. So that will change. One of the problems is that our technology has outpaced our wisdom. Another issue really is in the information that we get. So this is why there is a difference between the truth in the United States and the truth in the Russian Federation.
Mm-hmm.
because neither is really true. It's a perspective based a lot of times on politics. So there's a difference between universal truth and an individual's own truth. So security is a concept that, uh, of course, people are concerned with. I think that we've kind of been told that, to be secure, to be safe, you have to give up some of your freedom. But that's kind of going the wrong direction because freedom is the foundation for security.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be able to filter through the noise. And even Eisenhower warned us against the military-industrial complex.
Right.
But it's really not just the military-industrial complex anymore. It's the military-industrial, corporate, political, educational, and media complex. The thing is massive. I mean, I think our budget for next year is 1.5 trillion for defense,
Mm-hmm.
just in this country. But worldwide, we produce $72 million of weapons per hour.
Wow.
Per
I
hour.
did not know that.
So I think we have an opportunity here, a window with what's going on. It's about a 40-year window. Now, it's not the last opportunity, but I think it's the best last opportunity.
Okay.
Um, the doomsday clock, which I'm sure you're familiar with,
Mm-hmm.
during the Vietnam War and the Cuban Missile Crisis was 7 minutes to midnight. And now, today, it's 89 seconds to midnight.
Wow.
So
Wow.
talk about perspective.
And what's interesting to me about the clock is how they make that determination as to how close we are to doomsday. If that's, that it's like, who determines that, or what scale are you, what parameters are you using to make that determination, going from 7 back then to 89 seconds now? It's like, wow. And when were we at 2 o'clock or
Or
3:30
midnight.
or that kind of thing?
Well, I'm not sure we were ever at 2 in the afternoon, but this clock wasn't started until I believe 1947. So,
Yeah.
and it was started by the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists because of the advent of nuclear weapons.
Mm-hmm.
And they do still pose a pretty grave threat. One time we had 50,000 nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
We're down to 12,500, which is only 12,400 more than you need to destroy the planet. So 100 nuclear explosions, depending on the ground to air burst ratio and yield and the targets, you could create a nuclear winter with 100 detonations.
Yeah. Or we could get hit by an asteroid, or we could have a coronal mass ejection that could completely disable all of our electronics. And now all those nuclear warheads and so forth are absolutely of no good whatsoever. They're just sitting there in the ground.
Well, they're really not of much use right now either. But
Well,
even without those, they're pretty they're destructive and they keep humanity in fear.
yeah.
They're unnecessary, they're counterproductive, they're dangerous. We
Yeah.
already know what we need to know to get rid of them. We don't need greater power.
No.
We need greater courage and we
Yeah.
need greater awareness of what it is to be human. Once we discover who we are,
Mm-hmm.
that will be the greatest discovery mankind could or ever will make.
Yeah. I like what one of my guests said to that. He said, I asked him, I says, do you think one day we'll know who we really are? He says, no. One day we will know who we have always been. I don't know that there's necessarily a big difference there, but nonetheless, we're talking with Ken Callison, and we're talking about basically a way to world peace as we continue on Tell Me Your Story. I am Reverend Dr. D. Richard Dugan. He is Ken Callison, and we are talking about way to world peace, basically an idea whose time has come. Obviously, that idea has been in the minds of people for generations, for millennia maybe, in that context. I know that when I watch a lot of these medieval movies, these movies that take place in that time period. And you've got these people who live in the castles, the royalty, if you will. And then the king and the queen. And then you've got the peasants who live way off, way away from the castle. They don't even get to live in the castle. And they're taxed to the nth degree. And I know a lot of people feel as though, yeah, well, times haven't changed much because you got the castle there in Washington, D.C., and the rest of us are all out here. But I will tell you something, and I want to ask you to talk a little bit about this from a more metaphysical perspective. I have, and I've shared this before, and I'm not knocking my employers in the last 20 years. Okay, this is not a jab at them. The radio station that I happen to have worked for and still work for to this day, I have been making the same salary for 17, now 18 years. All right. And I was living until last October in Santa Barbara, California. You know about Santa Barbara. Big
Sure.
dollar sign, right? One of
Yeah.
the most expensive places to live in the country. I was living there with my wife from 2006 until October of this past year. Same salary. Now, I was doing some side jobs, that kind of thing, but nothing huge. But I was living in Santa Barbara. And then when we got our eviction notice, for whatever reason, I decided that I would do a fill out a form for pre-approval for a home loan, thinking that never happened. I mean, not in this economy, not the way things are going. Boom! The next thing I know, we are moving into our new home. We own it. I mean, with a loan, obviously. We share ownership with the bank. In any event, and so when I take a look at the last 20 years of my life, and if I want to focus on the economy, I really get flustered when I hear people talk about how bad the economy is, regardless of what year it happens to be. And then I would ask them, so let me ask you, how big a family? Oh, I got a family of four. So did you go on vacation last year? Oh, yeah. Where'd you go? Oh, we went to Disneyland. What'd that cost you? 2, 3 grand. So let me ask you, why are you complaining about the economy when you found a way to take your family on a fun vacation that costs you between 2 and 3 grand, $2,000 and $3,000? My wife and I have always, since we've been together, and she's basically inculcated this in me, especially regarding gasoline prices. And in California, obviously, they're higher in most places. Started out in Arizona, in Phoenix. Basically, she has always said, the price is what it is. You either pay it or you don't. There is no room for complaint. So when I go to the gas station in Phoenix and I pay 250 a gallon, or I go to the gas station in California and I pay 450 a gallon, I either pay it or I don't. No complaints. I'm not going to put out that kind of energy. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about perspective of things, and that there is, yes, the reality. It's 450 a gallon in California. But the metaphysical reality is what it is. And I'm either going to put it in my tank and pay the 450 a gallon and be happy about it, meaning I'm able to afford to put 450 a gallon into my tank and drive around where I want to go. I have the mobility. What's your perspective in terms of those comparisons of the quote unquote reality of the material world versus the more metaphysical or esoteric aspects of what we choose to perceive things as?
Well, the world is a combination, and we have arrived where we are because of the combination of our thought. And there is, you asked kind of for a metaphysical view. So our thought, each individual's thought, is registered in the race consciousness of the human race and in universal consciousness. But you are correct that I think there's a frustration on the part of individuals that life is not as nearly as simple as it used to be. I think they long for some simplicity in their life. But
Mm.
if we take things for granted, or if we're entitled, and if we behave that way and believe that way, then I think that lack of joy and that frustration increases. So maybe we should be grateful for what we have.
Hmm. That would be a good thing. And then, of course, from a metaphysical perspective, being grateful for who we are, where we are, and so forth, um, is a good thing, and it certainly plays into the physical chemistry of each human being. When one is grateful, there are different things that go on in the chemistry that actually make one feel pretty darn good, and so we should do that. Next subject I want to talk about, the constant in the universe. But I'm going to hold that. Before I do, I'm going to tell you folks, you are listening to Kenneth Callison, and of course his book, which is The Way to World Peace. We hope that you'll get a copy and go to his website, which just so happens to be atimeforhumanity.org. Atimeforhumanity.org will be linked to that website as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Reverend Dr. Dave Richard Dugan. He is Kenneth Callison, and again, A Way to World Peace, The Way to World Peace, an idea whose time has come. The constant in the universe drives people frickin' crazy. And you talk about macro and micro. What I find fascinating is we take a look out through the telescopes, and of course, this is sort of on the precursor of us going back to the moon, which is really kind of cool. Now, granted, we're only going to go around it a few times and come back, but you got to start somewhere. But you look out into the universe and you see things exploding, you see things colliding, see things going away and coming back and doing this and that and the other. And what do? We go, ooh, we're amazed. We're in awe of what's going on out there. Now, turn it inward to the microcosmic world. Get yourself an electron microscope and look at the subatomic particles that are basically doing the same thing that's going on out in the universe, all right, in the macrocosmic world. We're in awe of what's happening. But when you get to the level where you and I live, I call it the mid-crow. It's a horrible, horrible term. I haven't come up with anything better. But when we see things happen at our level, there is judgment. It's either good or it's bad. Some people say, oh, it's bad. That's the devil. Oh, that's good. That was God. Others, they just say, they generate these emotions. I've been fighting, and I won finally the duality argument in my own mind and heart. There is no duality. There is no good or bad. Just out in the macro and in the micro, that is just the way that it is. That is just what happens. And someone actually put this together, Ken. They said, if you were to look back through history and your ancestors, all right, your parents, your grandparents, great grandparents, and go on back, the only reason that you and I are here, Ken, is because of them. They made it through. They survived. They went through the trials and tribulations, if you will, that some folks claim they're going through today. So change is the constant in the universe. Have you found a way to make peace with that and say, hey, this is just the way that it is? Or do you still fall back into the this is good event and this is a bad event kind of thing?
Well, I personally agree with you on your perspective on duality. But just like anybody, there, sure, I have times of sadness or depression or whatever, or I get frustrated or I get angry with something. Yeah, anger is basically an expression of fear. People are more comfortable in their anger than they are in their fear. You talked about macro and micro, and I do discuss this in different parts of the book. One you might find interesting is a chapter called God's Brain.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's actually one of my favorite chapters because if you look at images from the Chandra telescope, there's the Hubble, which photographs images of objects, and the Chandra telescope photographs invisible energy fields. It photographs uh, invisible light, which is energy, as Einstein knew. that information is basically compressed energy. Energy is compressed information. There, it's like time and space are equivalent. So this is why we're able to communicate using light, fiber optic cable. We're using light to communicate. So if you look at the images from the Chandra telescope, which is photographing stars and star clusters and nebula and so forth, you see these energy fields being transmitted between these heavenly bodies. And it looks exactly like you've seen the images of the neurons firing in the human brain. The Chandra telescope of the energy fields between stars are almost identical. That's because we're a mirror image of God. You are witnessing, those are neurons fire,
Mm-hmm.
the stars, when the star twinkles. You're really witnessing the real time operation of God's brain.
You do realize what comes to mind is Horton Hears a Who.
Well, what's unique about the book is it has some very basic concepts
Hmm.
and goes into history and so forth, but it also has a greater macro view, as you said. What's really interesting is people that are politically liberal think it's a liberal book, and people that are politically conservative think it's a conservative book. So I must have hit a nerve somehow because each group thinks it's what they want it to be, I guess. But
Yeah.
it's yeah, there's some practical steps in the book,
Yeah.
but we do have to become aware, empowered, and then take some action. Whatever seeds we plant, that's what we're going to get.
Yeah.
If you plant a daisy seed, you're going to get a daisy. You're not going to get a
Yeah.
stalk of corn.
Well,
And then you have to water it. So if you plant negative, destructive seeds of anger and fear, that's what you're going to get.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Well,
like
you
in
have to water.
broadcasting. People
Yeah,
hear what they want to hear sometimes.
they do. They do. Hopefully, they want to hear this. I think they do because
I do.
I tell you what, I barely get the title of the book out of my mouth, and they say I want it. I want to read that. So they know instinctively down deep in their core that we do need to do something because our journey is either together or not at all, and we do have the ability to change. This isn't, we've been told the peace is impossible. It's too complicated. It'll
Yeah.
never happen. Of course, we were told that if you sail out on the ocean, you'll fall off the edge of the earth, and
Yeah.
flight is impossible, and everything we've ever accomplished at one time was supposedly impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's extraordinary again to begin to have the imagination to create some of these things in our mind, and it has been said from a metaphysical standpoint that that's how we achieve these things. It's first a thought in our imagination. I mean, Jules Verne, wrote this book about going to the moon, and then, of course, in 1969, we finally landed on and walked on the moon, and now, about 50 years later, we're going back. And I think that it's kind of cool. I'm saddened, of course, by the loss of life that we've had, but I'm also very much aware if you're going to be an explorer, that's part of the risk, especially if you're going to go to the depths of the ocean, like if you want to traverse the Mariana Trench, you want to climb Mount Everest, or in this case, you want to go to the moon. Exploration is not without, um, you know, sort of. I want to put it in a light that's not real negative, but I mean, I watched as the Challenger exploded in 1980. Was it six? I think it was. In any event, and I couldn't believe what I was watching. I watched as they were showing the video, or they were showing the live shots of the. I think it was the Discovery. I think it was that came through the atmosphere and broke up into
Yep.
pieces. I was watching when the Twin Towers came down, and of course, my first thought, believe it or not, was, "Wow, they've gotten really good with CGI. This is incredible," you know. And then, of course, any other event, and I argue this point. You talk about reality and everything. When people, get really headstrong about a particular belief they have in an event that took place, I say, well, all right, then let's put it this way. Here's going to be my way of evaluating an event that took place. If I wasn't physically there to watch it happen, it didn't happen. Now that's my perspective. All right. I'm not saying to you, Ken, it didn't happen. I'm saying if I wasn't there physically, again, metaphorically speaking, I didn't see it happen. It's on TV. And they've even back in 2001, they were really good. I mean, look at Star Wars. That was done in the 70s. By the way, do you know how they shot explosions like the Death Star exploding in Star
I,
Wars?
I do not.
They had a camera underneath looking up, and then they had it explode. And that's why you were able to see it go out in all directions. It was really cool. It didn't change the mystery for me, but it was just kind of cool to see. We're talking with Ken Callison, and of course, we're talking, of course, about the way to world peace, an idea whose time has come. A timeforhumanity.org is the website. A timeforhumanity.org will be linked to that website. We hope that you will go there and find out more about Ken, the work he's doing. And got some interesting questions coming up for Ken as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. Ken Callison, I want to ask you as we move forward through this conversation about peace and the way of peace, the way to peace, I should say, to world peace, an idea whose time has come. What is it that you are hoping will come about from people reading this book? What's your vision, maybe your mission statement, if you will?
Well, the mission statement for the nonprofit, and the book is just one pillar to the nonprofit, but the
Mm-hmm.
mission statement for the nonprofit is to unite humanity in order to save us from ourselves.
Mm.
So the objective of all of this work is to run peace like a business, just like war is run as a business. We need to
Mm.
invest that much time and money and effort and belief in peace. And people say, well, you can't talk yourself into peace. Well, sure you can. We talk ourselves into war all the time.
That's beautiful. Yeah, we do. And what's real interesting is, you talked earlier about how you foresee a war over water coming, say by 2040 in that general area. I've heard that statement before, not a specific time period, but just that on the one hand, they say, well, it's a diminishing resource. By the way, I would disagree. There has been exactly the same amount of water on this planet for centuries. It's just in different forms. And if we would learn how to collect it when it rains, then we would not have this problem. Now, of course, we've created reservoirs and lakes and so on and so forth all over the planet. But there are not many people who have collection systems, let's say, connected to, shall we say, the roof of their house, for example, with the gutters and all this kind of stuff and a little filtration. I even designed one that was a 10-foot square PVC pipe. And on one side, you had this V-shaped PVC pipe that came down, and then you'd put a tarp in it or some material that would gather it, and then you'd have it on a little bit of a tilt, and it would fill your drums, and then you'd filter it, and so on and so on and so on. So there are all kinds of ideas out there. And with all the snow that they're getting back east in particular, is anybody collecting that? Is anybody scooping it up and taking it to a place where, as the weather warms up, it turns into water and they process it? And so, no, nobody's doing that. I mean, I see these guys out in the wilderness, the videos on YouTube and so forth, where they're out there and they take the snow and they put it into this thing and they heat it up and then they put it through a little charcoal filter, and they're living off the land. So I'm not going to disagree with you on your assessment. I just think it's avertible if we would put our wherewithal into that process, along with
Well,
desal plants.
absolutely. I mean, it's a
Yeah,
matter of focus.
yeah,
And I think the difference today is well, number one, there's 8.2 billion people on the planet,
true.
plus, which continues to grow 172 million a year. But uh, besides that, the agricultural use of water and the industrial use and the pollution of the water,
Mm,
so there's less available fresh drinking water because we are poisoning the ocean. Not that we get drinking water from it, but
right.
we are taking the planet for granted
Oh,
and
yes.
have been for centuries. But the destruction of the ecosystem has its own particular risk. But we are right now in the middle of the Holocene epoch, which is a geological epoch, but that is another extinction level occurrence. But
Oh,
the
wow.
difference with this is that most of the ecological collapse is not natural. We are creating a change on a global level at about 1,000 times the rate it would occur naturally.
Mm,
So all of these are going to produce shortages.
yeah,
Now, you are right. If were cooperated, then solutions would exist to our
yeah,
challenges.
yeah.
And this is where you get into survival of the fittest. I had mentioned earlier, we don't really understand evolution. We think that's something that happens to us. And survival of the fittest is another concept, which, of course, politicians use it, and it's not a matter of survival of the strongest.
Hmm.
Survival of the fittest is dependent on those that are best able to adapt. So, in the event of a nuclear war, the cockroach would be the fittest creature. That would be the creature to survive because it's best able to adapt. And
Well,
in our case, adaptation and our future is dependent upon learning how to cooperate
yeah.
and unlearning hatred and anger.
Well, two things on that. Uh, One, well, maybe only one thing. I remember my conversation with Greg Braden on this program, and we were talking about the difference between cooperation and competition. And they did a study, and this was years ago, where they had two groups, one that competed, the other collaborated. And what they gauged was the productivity of each group. And what was interesting was the highest productivity was from the group that collaborated, not competed. And my personal example is of me as an operations manager at a radio station back in Phoenix. And the question was asked of me, well, don't you care about your competition? I said, no, because there's nothing I can do about them. My objective is to make this radio station better today than it was yesterday and better tomorrow than it is today. And my focus is on what I'm doing, not what they're doing, because to me, that's a diversion. And that takes away from my energy going to a metaphysical perspective, takes away my focus. So now my productivity drops because I'm using one eye to look at what I'm doing and the other eye to look at somebody else and what they're doing. And you can't do, they even did a study on multitasking. It's horrible. As much as it sounds like a great thing to be able to do multitask, what's the quality of the work of each of the tasks that you were doing as a multitasker? And I will attest to the fact that I have tried doing it. For example, right now I could be processing some logs or something while you're chatting away, but then I'm not focused on you. So then the interview suffers. It's not as good. The quality isn't there. It's very interesting. A lot of these different dynamics that you talk about in the book. And I hope people will go and get a copy of it. And yes, I think you're absolutely right. When people pick it up and read A Way to World Peace. Hang on, let me read this real quick here. By the way, is it available yet in Audible?
In about a week, the ebook's up, the hardback, the softback, and I figure about a week because it just went up on Amazon.
Are you the narrator, or did you get someone to do it?
Got a narrator. There was, that's kind of a toss up. It's a hard decision for me to make because I know the subject matter. But of course, a professional narrator, you get a little bit of benefit from that.
Right, right. Well, I will tell
But
you two things.
you were talking earlier about collaboration
Mhm.
versus competition. Um, Anybody that's married could tell you the value there.
Yes, yes. I'm not really I'm not really fond of some of the sitcoms where you have a husband and wife, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he played Joey in Friends, and he was in this new comedy. He's now got gray hair and everything, where he and his wife are always trying to get one up on the other. And usually at the end they come together. But of course it wouldn't have been a very interesting show, obviously, if they had gone the other way. But with my wife and I I don't care much for. I mean, certainly there's lots that I do on my own. Obviously, this work and so forth. But when it comes to our new home, I want her to be a part of it, and she wants me as well to put up the pictures over here and do this over there, and so on and so forth. And it just makes it. It certainly does. It does great things for the relationship, but it also makes our house feel more like our home, not my home, not her home, but ours. And so, yeah, it's very cool. Ken Collison is my guest, and it's about the way to world peace that we're talking about here on Tell Me Your Story. I am Reverend Dr. D, and he is Kenneth Callison, and his website is a timeforhumanity.org, a timeforhumanity.org, where you can find out more about the work that he is doing at this nonprofit. How long have you had this?
Oh gosh, the nonprofit and the book. Oh, I've worked on it for years, but just both of them just really rolled out in the last, well, the nonprofit maybe a couple months ago. The book just got released on Amazon 2 weeks ago. So it's all pretty brand new, but the information, the stories, the solutions, the enlightenment, we've been told everything that I bring forth in the book. We've been told before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's nothing new. By the way, when it comes to the conversations about climate change or global warming, however you want to phrase it, and the science, I say, I don't want to talk about the science or global warming or climate change. Here's what I want to talk about, and it goes to what you just said a little while ago. We need to clean up our home. This is it. This is all we've got. I know Elon wants to go to Mars. They're looking at inhabiting the moon. But for the rest of us, this is it. We need to clean it up. And
Well, if
even
we
if
would
it's
clean up our thought and our hearts and our
awful.
fears,
Oh,
then all else will fall into place.
oh, you right on, right on. Well, I'm not going any further with that. Ken, I want to thank you. Would love to have you back to talk more about this, but thank you for joining us here on the program and sharing your thoughts and ideas, as well as your nonprofit, which again is a timeforhumanity.org, and your book, The Way to World Peace, an idea whose time has come. Thank you so much. I'm going to direct everybody to your website to get a copy and get involved in whatever way they can to,
Absolutely.
as we like to say, make this world a better place for everyone.
We can do it.
Yeah, we can. Thank you so much. I do have three final questions I want to ask you that I ask all of my guests.
All right.
Before I do, I want to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m. That's our special edition of Tell Me Your Story. And then Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times, live at richarddugan.com. We're on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and we're on YouTube where you can watch these conversations. We hope that you'll subscribe as well as click notification. Please go to Amazon to get a copy of my book, Choices, 5 Steps for Life, which is what we've been talking about throughout this entire program. This is all about choice, folks. And I hope you'll get a copy in hardcover, paperback, or Kindle. And then also, if you could leave us a tip, we would be greatly appreciative. Our tip jar is PayPal. And we hope that you will go to PayPal. We have links at the homepage of richarddugan.com to Amazon for the book and PayPal for a tip. Whatever you can help us out with, we'll take energetic support too, again, going into the metaphysical realm. And then a reminder to take some time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still small voice. And with all of that being said, we ask you to stay tuned because we're going to now ask our very special guest those 3 final questions. And the first of those is, who is Kenneth Paul Callison?
Well, I'm a researcher. I'm a motivator. I am a writer. I got involved with this because I've always been involved with this. When I was raised from a pup, I was raised in the sciences and metaphysics and philosophy. So I've always been involved. People quite often say I'm a visionary, but that vision we all have. I think one of the quotes I like from the book comes from Jimi Hendrix. He said, "When the power of love overcomes the love of power, we shall know peace."
I love that. What gets you up in the morning?
Usually a good cup of coffee. But I am driven for this. It's kind of my life purpose. I've always been good at resolving conflict. I'm kind of a peacemaker by nature. So that's just how I'm wired.
Well, final question, and it comes from a movie, City Slickers, where Mitch is out with his buddies riding horses, and he asks them this question, and I ask you, what was your best day?
Oh, most days are my best day, but if I were to pick one, the birth of my children is pretty high on the list. People ask me that's kind of interesting. And people will ask me, well, aren't you excited, that the book got published or whatever, or you did an interview? And what excites me is when other people see the potential and understand the path and are willing to risk peace, because we have to be willing to risk it if we want it.
Yeah, well, and again, I mentioned about our explorer nature. We're going back to the moon, of course, here in about a week or so. And other explorations, whether it's Christopher Columbus or Ponce de Leon or whoever it is, there's risk involved, and we have to learn how to take that risk. Thank you so much for being with us. I thank you folks for being with us. And until our next broadcast, podcast, video cast, love Talal. Jeanette, I'm still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. Let's see here. Mike, thanks for being in my life and letting me be in yours. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.